Welcome to my Angelfish Paint With Me tutorial. Today we are going to paint an orange angelfish with a blue background. This tutorial is for my colouring club members. You can join via my website kobeanmore.com. If you're already a member and you've received your watercolour paper and your paint sample, let's get started. So what you will need is a medium round paintbrush and a small round paintbrush, and as always, 2 water dishes. One for washing your paintbrush after you've used orange and one after you've used blue. So for step 1, what we're going to do is we're going to paint the background blue. Using a lot of water and a small amount of pigment, we're going to apply a light wash all the way over the background without painting inside the fish shape. Carefully trace around the fish shape with your paintbrush. If you do go over the line, it's okay. We're going to paint the fish later, but try to keep as much of the blue pigment outside of the fish shape as possible. While we finish this step, let's listen to some chill music. If you want to skip ahead to the next step, you can use the timestamps in the video description. Once you have completely painted the background blue, you're going to let it dry. Letting your artwork dry has 2 benefits. The first being it's much easier to bend back into shape once it's dry. And the second is that when we add the orange pigment inside the fish, it won't bleed into the background. So as I said, if your paper has bowed slightly, now is the time to carefully bend it back into shape. You want to make sure that you're not folding the paper, you're just gently curving it back in the opposite direction to the way that it has curved. And once your paper is fairly straight again, we can start painting. We will be painting the fish orange, and we are going to do it in a variety of layers. So we're going to first start with a very light wash of orange over the body of the fish. We are not going to paint the fins of the fish because we actually are going to leave some areas in the fins white. So using a lot of water and a small amount of orange pigment, carefully paint inside the entire body of the fish. You can also paint into the stripe that goes into the tail and the little stripe ends that go into the fins. There's also a small amount of the body showing under the pectoral fin, so you can paint that too. Then we are going to switch to the smaller round brush, and we are going to start painting the delicate areas of the fins. For the fins of the angelfish, instead of painting inside the shape, we are going to paint along the lines. We are also going to paint this in layers. So for the first layer, you want to use lots of water and a small amount of pigment, just creating a very light shade of orange over each of the lines, leaving the internal spaces white. Let's listen to some more music as we do this, or you can use the timestamps to skip ahead to the next step. So in step 3, we're going to be adding some shading to the body of the fish and some shading to the fins of the fish. So starting with the body, we're going to add darker orange pigment to the top of the fish. I was using these little angelfish as a reference. So you can see in this picture, they are much darker along the top, and then their bellies are light orange. So I added darker pigment to about the halfway point of the fish, and then I added some water and blended that into the rest of the body. You want to make sure there's no sharp lines left. So use the water to create a gradient, keeping it darker at the top, and you can bring the color around the back of the fish, but try to keep the belly of the fish as light as possible. Once you're happy with the body, we're going to move on to the fins. Using your small brush again, we're going to add some darker pigment along the lines of the fins, starting at the center of the fish and moving towards the edge of the fins, but we're only going to go about halfway instead of going all the way to the edge of the fins. By leaving more white space and lighter orange towards the edges of the fins, we are trying to create a delicate flowy effect. Okay, let's listen to some more music while we finish this step. This step is optional based on how vibrant you want your fish to be. I found that when my paint has dried, the colour is a little bit too light for my liking. So I'm going to repeat the previous step, adding more pigment so I can get more vibrant colours. If your fish is already looking quite vibrant, you may not need to do this step. So as you can see, I'm just doing the same steps that I did before, adding dark pigment to the top of the fish and then blending it with water and trying to keep the belly of the fish quite light. It's one of the things that I really love about watercolour is that you can just keep adding layers until you're happy with the result. Once I finished the body of the fish, I also added some more dark pigment to the fins. I decided to do this as I just wanted a little bit more depth of colour in the fins. But it's completely up to you. If your fins are already the way you like them, you don't have to do this step. Okay, I'll skip to the end of this step now so you can see how vibrant my fish turned out. For this step, we are going to be painting the stripes on the fish. So we want these stripes to be black, but we don't have the colour black on our palette. So what we're going to do is we're going to use both the orange and the blue to make a really dark shade. If you've been following along my colouring tutorials, you know that I like to do my mixing on the page. So I'm going to paint the stripes orange and then I will paint the blue over the top. But you can mix the two on a palette if you choose. For this tutorial, I'm going to show you the method for mixing the colour on the page. So in order to get a nice dark shade of black, we need to use lots of pigment. So you can see here, I'm painting the orange stripes with a lot of orange pigment. And then I'm going to go over them with a lot of blue. I will just quickly speed up this video so I can show you the whole step. As you can see, I'm painting the dark orange pigment all the way across the fish's body and into the fins. When it comes to the stripe behind the pectoral fin, I'm painting into the gaps and leaving the interior shape of the pectoral fin a light shade of orange. Once you have completely painted the stripes with dark orange pigment, you're going to let that dry. For this step, I decided to paint the background. So you can see all I'm doing here is adding a second layer of blue wash. But instead of covering the entire background, I'm staying within the square bounding box. I just wanted to add a little bit more depth to the background, but if your background is already pretty dark, you don't need to do this. Once that layer is complete, then you do have to let it dry. The next thing I did for the background is to paint all of the abstract water pattern dark blue. This is a bit different from what I did with the abstract water pattern in the seahorse tutorial. I thought that I'd just try some new things and different ways of painting an abstract water pattern. Once you have tried them both, let me know which one's your favourite. Or if you have created your own abstract background, I would love to see it. Share it with me on my social media. Okay, let's go back to listening to some music while we paint this background. So once I had completely painted all of the lines, I wanted to make it a little bit more abstract. So I decided to paint an additional line inside each of the shapes. So all I did here was to leave a space about the same width as the line and then paint an additional line about the same width again. I then repeated this process inside each of the shapes until I started getting this abstract and slightly chaotic water pattern. Let's listen to some music while we finish this step. Now we are going to finish painting the fish's stripes. We are going to add a lot of dark blue pigment on top of the orange pigment that we painted earlier. By doing this, we will get some very dark black stripes. If you've used more orange pigment than blue pigment, your stripes may turn out to be a little bit brown. And if you've used more blue pigment than orange pigment, your stripes might be a little bit green. You can play with this effect depending on what you prefer. In my example, I chose to use an equal amount of orange pigment and blue pigment so that I would get a very vibrant shade of black. Let's listen to some music while we finish this step. If you're happy with your result, you can stop here, but I decided that I wanted to add some more depth to the background and add some darker color around the border. So what I did is add one more layer of blue wash covering the abstract water background pattern. I did this because I felt that the pattern was a little bit too overwhelming, so I just wanted to dull it down a little bit so that the focus is more on the fish and less on the background. Then I also decided that I wanted to give the fish a little bit more of a frame. So I painted all the way around the border with lots of dark blue pigment. And then I actually did this twice because the first time it just wasn't dark enough, and I really wanted it to be a nice, dark, rich blue border. And that's one of my favorite things about working with watercolor is that if the colors are not vibrant enough, you can just keep adding layers until you're happy with the result. These steps are completely up to you. Final touches are all about what you feel is right for your artwork. And that brings us to the end of this tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see your paintings. You can share them with me on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. My handle is @KobeAnnMoore. Or if you post a picture on social media, use the hashtag Kobe's Colouring Club.